Welcome to my channel Forever Celeb. He scored hundreds of goals. He broke records that had stood for decades. He wore the England captain's armband through tournaments that defined generations of supporters. For most of his career, Harry Kane collected nearly every individual honor a striker could dream of, and watched someone else lift every team trophy. It took leaving the only senior club he had ever known, moving to a foreign country, and waiting until he was 31 years old before a major team honor was finally in his hands. This is the story of how an 8-year-old rejected by Arsenal built a mind powerful enough to survive the lowest valleys of elite sport, and eventually claimed the prizes that had spent over a decade eluding him. Harry Edward Kane was born in London on July 28, 1993, and raised in Chingford, East London. Around the age of 8, he entered Arsenal's youth academy, and didn't last. Professional evaluators were required to make early decisions about children whose bodies and abilities were still forming. Kane, by the assessment of the time, wasn't yet the explosive prospect the system was looking for. Years later, former Arsenal Academy director Liam Brady publicly acknowledged the club had considered the boy, a bit chubby and not very athletic, before admitting that releasing him had been a mistake. Kane later said he had probably been too young to fully understand what the rejection meant. There was no dramatic vow to prove Arsenal wrong. The more important response came from his father, Pat, who refused to let disappointment turn into bitterness. Walking behind the family home, Pat placed an arm around his son and said, "Don't worry, Harry. We'll work harder and we'll go on and we'll find another club." That sentence gave the family something practical to do next. The assessment could be accepted without being treated as final. Pat's response to setbacks throughout Kane's childhood was usually the same: "Well, let's get on with it then." Not a motivational speech. Not a promise that everything would work out. A direction. Kane returned to grassroots football with Ridgeway Rovers, where the game still belonged to children, volunteer coaches, and weekend fixtures. The years that followed were a gradual education: matches, mistakes, physical growth, repetition. The intelligence that would eventually make him one of the most complete strikers of his era wasn't visible in a single audition. It required time. Learning to read movement, recognizing space, improving his first touch, understanding where the next phase of play would develop. Arsenal had released a boy who hadn't yet grown into his body or completed his football education. The rejection should not be romanticized as painless. Kane later acknowledged it gave him something to prove. But it was not the event that defined him. It was one of many moments in which a door closed, a family found another one, and the work continued. Earning a professional contract at Tottenham Hotspur was a genuine triumph, followed immediately by the unglamorous reality of the English football pyramid. Premier League clubs rarely hand starting positions to unproven teenagers. They send them into the lower divisions to find out who's built for it. In January 2011, at 17, Kane went on loan to Leyton Orient in League One. By 18, he was at Millwall in the Championship. A club fighting relegation, playing in front of one of the most demanding supporter groups in the country. He absorbed the physical intensity of professional football against grown men fighting for their careers, learned to use his body under pressure, and won Millwall's Young Player of the Season award by proving he wasn't afraid of it. Then came Leicester City, and the lowest point of his career. An injury-disrupted stint at Norwich had already slowed his momentum. At Leicester, playing in the Championship under Nigel Pearson, Kane found himself stuck on the bench with barely any playing time and no clear path to the first team. He later admitted sitting alone in a sparse apartment during that loan period was the darkest stretch of his professional life. The isolation produced real doubt. He called his father and told him he wanted to quit the loan spell and come home to London. Pat gave him the same response he always had: keep working. Stay focused. Trust the process. Around this time, Kane found a documentary that shifted something in his thinking, The Brady Six, about American quarterback Tom Brady, who had been passed over by almost every NFL team in the 2000 draft because scouts doubted his athleticism and questioned his physical profile. The parallels were striking. The film offered concrete evidence that being overlooked was not a terminal verdict. It was a condition that could be outlasted. Kane returned to London with a hardened resolve. When managerial shifts at Tottenham under Tim Sherwood and then the arrival of Mauricio Pochettino created brief opportunities, minor cup fixtures, late substitutions, he took them with everything he had. He pressed defenders into the ground. He fought for every loose ball. A deflected free kick against Aston Villa in late 2014 opened the floodgates, and Spurs supporters responded by chanting that he was one of their own. Establishing himself as a goalscorer was only the first phase of his development. Over the following seasons, Kane refused to be confined to the role of penalty box predator. He transformed into the central nervous system of his team. Dropping into midfield areas to receive the ball under pressure, turning and launching diagonal passes that unlocked defenses, operating as much like a quarterback as a traditional striker. This tactical evolution produced one of the most dangerous attacking partnerships in Premier League history alongside Son Heung-min. Kane could draw a defender forward, release Son into the space created behind the line, and simultaneously remain the most likely finisher if the ball came back. He won 3 Premier League Golden Boots, claimed the top scorer award at the 2018 World Cup in Russia, and built a scoring record at Tottenham that surpassed every player in the club's history. The numbers were remarkable. The trophies were absent. Finals accumulated alongside the goals. The League Cup defeat to Chelsea in 2015. Rushing back from ankle ligament damage to start the 2019 Champions League final against Liverpool, only to lose 2-0 in Madrid. The Carabao Cup final against Manchester City in 2021, played days after his manager Jose Mourinho was unexpectedly sacked. The Euro 2020 final at Wembley, where England took an early lead against Italy and lost on penalties. The Euro 2024 final in Berlin, where England led Spain before losing 2-1, with Kane controversially substituted before the decisive moments. 5 major finals. 5 defeats. The narrative became a constant weight, revisited in every interview, debated in every punditry panel. The lowest individual moment of his international career arrived on December 10, 2022, under the lights of Al Bayt Stadium in Qatar. England faced France in a World Cup quarter-final. Kane had already converted 1 penalty that evening to draw level. With time running short and England trailing 2-1, Mason Mount was fouled and the referee pointed to the spot again. The goalkeeper was Hugo Lloris, Kane's Tottenham teammate for nearly a decade. Kane rejected the suggestion afterward that familiarity had complicated his preparation. He had a plan. He struck with power. The ball continued rising, passing over the crossbar and into the stands. He pulled the front of his shirt toward his face. Placed his hands on his knees. The match ended 2-1. England were out. Speaking afterward, Kane did not search for an explanation that reduced his responsibility. He separated preparation from execution. The first penalty had been struck as intended, the second had not. No accusation directed at the goalkeeper, the referee, or the pressure surrounding the moment. He said the defeat would hurt everyone involved and accepted that as captain, he would take it on the chin. Weeks later, he acknowledged he would probably carry the memory of that missed penalty for the rest of his life. He didn't attempt to dismiss it. He said it would stay with him, and it would not change him as a player or as a person. 3 months after Qatar, England played Italy in Naples. Kane stood over another penalty. He took it. The ball reached the net, giving him his 54th England goal and moving him past Wayne Rooney as the nation's all-time leading scorer. The miss in Qatar would remain. So would the decision to accept another kick when it arrived. By the summer of 2023, Kane was approaching 30 with 1 year remaining on his contract. He had won every individual award available to a striker, broken the defining club record at Tottenham, and watched team trophies claimed by somebody else every season. On August 12, 2023, he completed his transfer to Bayern Munich, leaving the only senior club he had represented professionally. He exchanged familiarity for uncertainty. A new league, a new language, a different football culture, a club where domestic success wasn't a distant hope but a recurring expectation. The first evening gave him immediate clarity about the standard required. On the same day his transfer was announced, Bayern lost 3-0 to RB Leipzig in the German Super Cup, with Kane coming off the bench. He had left Tottenham partly to compete for trophies. His first night in German football ended with another opponent celebrating. His opening Bundesliga season was prolific individually and painful collectively. He scored freely but Bayern surrendered the title to an unbeaten Bayer Leverkusen. The old jokes revived, as if one striker could carry a club's curse across borders. Kane returned for a second season under Vincent Kompany and continued the work. On May 4, 2025, Bayer Leverkusen's result confirmed Bayern Munich as Bundesliga champions. The trophy Kane had spent over a decade failing to win was secured. 6 days later, at the Allianz Arena, Bayern defeated Borussia Mönchengladbach 2-0 in their final home match. Kane scored the opening goal. After the whistle, the stadium remained full for the championship presentation. When the Meisterschale finally reached him, he raised it above his head, smiled toward the stands, and let teammates cover him in the traditional wheat beer celebration. No penalty shootout. No opposing captain preparing to lift the prize. The trophy was in his hands. He described the feeling as worth the wait, and spoke not just about the goals but about the work and sacrifice required to win something together. Golden Boots had confirmed his individual excellence. The Meisterschale confirmed that excellence had finally existed inside a championship team. The 2025-26 season became the most prolific of Kane's career. At 32, he scored 61 goals in 51 appearances, including 36 in the Bundesliga, top scorer for a third consecutive season. He won another European Golden Shoe and passed 500 senior goals for club and country in February. Those numbers placed him among the defining scorers of the era. The season's most complete moment arrived in Berlin on May 23, 2026. Bayern faced VfB Stuttgart in the DFB Pokal final, attempting a domestic double. The first half was difficult. Stuttgart pressed aggressively, created the better chances, and forced Bayern to scramble. Kane reached halftime goalless in a final that still felt entirely open. 10 minutes into the second half, Michael Ollis delivered a cross into the area. Kane moved ahead of his marker and threw his body toward the ball, directing a diving header beyond the goalkeeper. Stuttgart now had to leave space while chasing the match, and Bayern began to control the areas that had been closed. In the 80th minute, Kane struck the crossbar from distance. As the attack continued, he received a pass from Luis Diaz, brought the ball under control with his first touch, created the shooting angle with his turn, and guided Bayern's second goal into the net. Then, a handball in stoppage time. Kane placed the ball on the spot, as he had done in Qatar, as he had done in Naples, and converted to complete a 3-0 victory and only the fourth hat-trick ever scored in a DFB Pokal final. He ran toward the Bayern supporters with his teammates as golden confetti fell across the Olympia Stadium. He called it one of the best nights of his career. 3 goals in the second half of a cup final, a domestic double, and a match ball he had earned in the manner of the competition itself, coming from behind, refusing to wait, and finishing the job when it mattered most. The summer carried him to North America for the World Cup. England advanced through the tournament, reached the semi-finals against Argentina in Atlanta, led during the second half, and lost 2-1. Kane did not disguise the devastation. He said he was heartbroken for everyone involved. England had one match remaining, a bronze medal game against France. Thomas Tuchel rotated his squad and Declan Rice captained the side in Kane's place. What followed was not a consolation. England scored 4 times in the first half. France responded after the interval in a contest that became a 10-goal collision before England prevailed 6-4. Bukayo Saka completed a hat-trick. England secured third place. Their highest World Cup finish since 1966 and their best ever result away from home soil. Kane received a bronze medal rather than the trophy he had pursued across his entire career. The tournament didn't answer every question about England's pursuit of another world title. It did complete a period in which the old description of him, a player destined never to win, had become impossible to sustain. Within 14 months. A Bundesliga title, a domestic double sealed with a hat-trick in a cup final, over 500 career goals, the most prolific season of his career, and England's best World Cup result in 60 years. None of it changed where the journey began. Before Munich and Berlin and North America, there was a boy released by Arsenal, a walk through a park in Chingford, and a father who refused to make the rejection larger than the next piece of work. Pat Kane didn't promise his son that every final would end in victory. He gave him a method for continuing when it didn't. More than 2 decades later, after the goals, the injuries, the missed penalty, the lost finals, and the trophies that finally arrived, the instructions still contained the whole career. Well, let's get on with it, then.